Hi guys. Today is let's have a look. Early in the morning of 28th of March 2011. And I've just finished watching, it's early in the morning here in Norway, here in Europe. And about an hour ago I finished watching the Ray Comfort show on the Atheist Experience. And I will be posting it as part of my Dillahunty Rips a Theist series, and it'll be part 24, I think it is now. That's coming. However, I wanted to introduce another debate. Almost exactly a year ago now, Aaron Ra was invited onto the Non-Profits show, which is a radio show associated with the atheist community of Austin, the ACA, and the Atheist Experience. And Aaron Ra was asked a question. Has Aaron Ra heard of Irrilegiosophy? He hadn't, and neither had I. Since that time in March of 2010, which is now about a year, I have been a devoted fan of Chuck and Leighton at Irrilegiosophy. Their website is in the crutch bar down below. They recently had a debate. They had a debate actually earlier concerning evolution in particular, about 3-4 weeks ago, in which one could suggest that the evidence for faith people were a little bit disingenuous, can you say, in the aftermath of the said debate. I mean, they were a little bit, how should you say, a little economical with the truth as to what actually transpired. But anyway, Chuck and Leighton let it go. So then a couple of weeks ago they had a further debate. The debate lasted 2 hours. And the debate in the first instance concerned the cosmological argument for the existence of God. And then the debate continued with, assuming that there is a God, why is there evidence for your religion, Christianity in particular? For those of you who are subscribed to my channel, by the way, new subscribers, thank you very much for subbing. To those of you who are subscribed to my channel but haven't heard of Irrilegiosophy, check them out. In particular, check out this debate that I am featuring. I am playing just the first 20 minutes concerning the cosmological argument, but the rest of it you will find on their website. It is 2 hours of total roasting and pwnage. And what is blatantly obvious is that Kirk and Leighton, the Irrilegiosophy atheists, know their Bible to the intimate detail, far more than evidence for faith. You would have to be a very, if you were being totally, how should I say, impartial, you would come away with no other conclusion than the evidence for faith boys did a very, very, very bad job of promoting their religion and explaining their beliefs. It was sheer 2 hours of absolute pwnage. I mean, really. The video or the audio quality is not very good. So they have, just to be warned, in places Chuck's voice does actually disappear. It's very difficult to understand him, but it's up there unedited, warts and all. Check it out. Here's the first 20 minutes of that debate. It gets really funny.
Hello and welcome to Irrilegiosophy, the one true podcast, and the only podcast to engage in meaningless debates with Christians who apparently don't know their own source material. To previous listeners of the show, the Evidence for Faith crew needs no introduction, but I'm going to give it anyway. Keith Kendricks and Kirk Hastings have come on the show to debate with us briefly the Kalam cosmological argument, and more extensively the, quote, evidence for Christianity. So without further ado, let's get on to the debate. We will present it completely unedited, partially because I'm very lazy, and partially so you guys can suffer exactly as much as we did. I cut out the first 5 minutes because we essentially just exchanged hellos, talked about some ground rules, and I believe Keith can pick it up from there. Keith?
Let's make sure we do got the right topic things, though. We want to do a little bit on the Kalam argument. Obviously, we could spend hours just talking on that, but hopefully just a few minutes, maybe no more than 15 minutes on that. What do you think?
Sure.
And then,
well, that was interesting. I thought our fans didn't want to hear about that. Didn't they want to drop that?
But since when do we care about what our fans want?
That's usually a good point. It's they can take it and
wanted
eat
to
it.
hear Dr. Mike instead of me anyway.
That's right, they did.
That's why I'm here.
So, a little bit on Kalam, and then we'll jump right into the main topic, which is, given the existence of God, why Christianity? What's your evidence for Christianity?
Okay.
All right, well, let's go ahead and start then. I think it would be best if you just went ahead and, because I think some of our listeners didn't understand the difference between the regular cosmological argument and the Kalam cosmological argument. So
It was actually something that there was quite a bit of discussion on the board, and they kept howling at us that we were answering it incorrectly. So why don't we set the two straight from the get-go?
Right. The cosmological argument basically says everything has a cause, the universe has a cause, therefore, the universe or God had a cause or something like that. I'm paraphrasing, but
Right.
that's basically it. It's Aristotle's prime mover argument. That you can't have an infinite regress. You go back to a first cause. You must have a first cause. That first cause was God.
Yep.
So how does the Kalam cosmological argument differ from the regular cosmological argument?
Well, it's basically a kind of a modernized version of the older arguments. And its first premise is whatever begins to exist has a cause. Second premise is that the universe began to exist. And the third premise is therefore, or the conclusion is that therefore the universe has a cause. So that's what we talked about in our last discussion. And you had mentioned a couple of answers, what you thought were refutations. I think you said that this was the fallacy of composition, and I believe you mentioned that you have to draw a distinction between the universe itself and the things in the universe.
Right.
So, and that was the end of the show, so we didn't get a chance to respond to that. But
we were in the middle of the show, but Leighton kept sticking his nose in and taking us out from the Kalam cosmological argument. I wanted to keep dragging you back, but
Well, that's because, once again, philosophy is one big circle jerk, and I would rather step away from that. So,
we love philosophy.
right.
well, that's because you have to hide somewhere when science takes away all other platforms.
So go take a nap, Leighton. The men,
I
men are going to
plan on
talk now.
I'm actually muting and eating a bagel while you guys talk about this subject, so don't be surprised if I'm quiet.
All right, so two options are the fallacy of composition. Actually, both of those kind of fall under the fallacy of composition. The universe is a set more than an actual thing itself, and you could argue that it's conflating an item or a thing with a set of things. And the fallacy of composition itself says that, the stuff that makes up the universe, you can describe those things, but the descriptions of those things don't have to apply to the entire universe.
Right. So an example of a fallacy of composition would be all the tiles on the floor are white, therefore the floor is white. Now at first that sounds, what's wrong with that? Of course it's true, but the problem is that it doesn't always work, so you can't trust it. For instance, if I say all of the parts of an elephant are light in weight, therefore the elephant is light in weight, that's an obvious fallacy.
Right.
But the problem is that that's not the argument that we're making. We're not saying that because the parts of the universe need or began to exist, therefore the universe began to exist, then that would be a fallacy of composition. We're saying that something can't come from nothing, that whatever begins to exist has a cause. So it's not a fallacy of composition because we are not arguing by composition.
Except
Period.
God, of course. God doesn't need creation.
But it's still not a fallacy of composition.
What you have are two things. You're carving out two categories: things that begin to exist and things that do not begin to exist. Correct?
Yes.
So, in your things that begin to exist, you have everything in the universe, and also the universe itself. Right? I mean, that's the jump. That's the logical jump.
Correct.
Which again, that argument is a fallacy of composition.
You're drawing a false dichotomy. When you say everything that exists, meaning every physical thing, and then you say the universe as if the universe is something separate from everything that exists, but the universe is actually a descriptor describing what everything that exists. It's just, if I say the universe, what I'm saying is everything that exists.
Right,
or rather, every physical thing that exists.
Right, that's my argument. That's it's like the set of odd numbers, right, is evenly spaced from each of its neighbors by 2. And the set of odd numbers then therefore would be spaced by every other set of numbers by 2. I mean, it doesn't make sense. You can't say the set of odd numbers is spaced from the set of irrational numbers by 2. You're making a leap there that doesn't, A, it's not warranted, and B, it doesn't make sense. If the universe is just a descriptor of things inside of it.
The word the universe is a descriptive word by which we mean all the physical things
right, it's
that
a set.
exist.
It's a set containing all of the things that exist.
Right.
So just because all of the things exist inside of the universe, that all of them had begun to exist, doesn't mean the universe itself began to exist. That's my problem with the argument. That's one problem with the argument. For example, all the universe, things that exist inside the universe exist within time. Well, time began when the universe began. You don't need a cause for the universe, because cause is temporal. It's located in time. How can you have an antecedent cause before time existed?
Well, you have to have a cause for
everything inside the universe, but not the universe itself.
But how does that fit in with God? Why don't we talk stupid talk right now? How is it God is excluded from the idea that everything must have a cause?
Well, there's a second counter argument to it, which Leighton is alluding to, and I mentioned a little bit earlier. You're carving up two sets: things that begin to exist, which includes, according to the argument, the universe and everything inside of it, and things that do not begin to exist, which includes what? God.
Anything that is self-existent. So, for
essentially
instance,
God. What else?
God would be one thing. Numbers. Many philosophers believe that numbers are self-existent.
Plato, but numbers are abstract concepts. Outside of a mind, you don't have any numbers. All you have are items. I mean, the number
right.
2...
It's much the same as color. Outside of our receptors and our minds being created to see this color, color does not exist.
Right. So numbers as an abstract concept require minds. Numbers begin to exist when minds approach a capacity to actually understand abstract thought. So you can't say that numbers always existed unless you accept some sort of Neoplatonism where you have ideal forms always existing.
No, actually, all you have to do is do an any conceivable world thought experiment, which, in which case, can you think of a conceivable world in which numbers do not exist?
Yeah,
and I would argue that
with no humans. No humans. Humans are responsible for the concept of numbers. It doesn't exist outside of human beings.
All right, so let's imagine a world then that has a solar system in it with 9 planets, and there are no humans there. So there are no humans in this world.
Correct.
Are you telling me that in this world there are no numbers?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Next, are you going to say that the alphabet is something that's always been in existence? We just kind of stumbled across it because it's
letters.
The same general concept.
Letters as well. I mean, in that scenario, you have a number of planets. You've got planets, right? But no one to say that there are 9 planets. You just have planets rotating around each other. You would have to have a human driving by and counting them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Aha, 9 planets. Other than that, outside of a mind that can grasp an abstract number, concept like numbers, you have no concept.
Well,
without minds, you got no numbers.
Could we assume that even in this universe where no humans exist, if God existed, he would still be able to count 9 planets?
Absolutely, but what I'm getting at is that you have a set whose entire, even theoretical components is 1. Right? In that case, that's a definition of special pleading. In that case, your argument boils down to everything except God has a cause. The universe is not God, therefore the universe has a cause, which is logical but not too useful. And once you move beyond to the actual point of the argument, which is to prove God exists, you now become circular under that. So you need something other than God to avoid the charge of special pleading in that.
Well, that's why they have numbers. I'm just waiting for more in that list.
Yeah, you got to have a mind to have numbers. And if you say that God exists and that gives you your mind, well, you're back to just God. Anything else?
No, I still think that the argument is still valid. It's not special pleading. It's no different than when atheists used to say that the universe existed forever. That's not special pleading, and neither is saying that God existed forever and has no beginning. So,
how about we start with this? What else is in that category with God and numbers? Because right now, numbers is iffy at best because you need a mind and an intellect to actually create numbers, to create alphabets, things like that. So what else is in that category with God to make it so it's not a special pleading?
Well, a lot of philosophers would say any kind of an abstract thing like properties. For instance, love could still exist because love is a property, and that doesn't need to have people. Just like numbers, you can have numbers even though there's nothing.
Wait. Now you're going to argue that animals have souls, and that within Christianity is something that is argued back and forth.
Well, hang on a second. In your scenario where you have 9 planets and no humans, are you telling me that the rocks are loving each other, the clouds are loving each other, the planet Jupiter loves Pluto? I mean, how does love exist outside of human beings? How does any abstract concept, which requires a mind in order to grasp, create, discover, exist outside of human beings?
Well, if there's no mind, then I would agree that mental concepts. Well, okay. Here's another thing that would exist: premises. Premises would exist.
Who is going to give your premises?
It doesn't matter.
This is a
who
bit of
gives them.
circular
Premises.
reasoning. You're basically saying we have minds, therefore minds exist, and therefore love always exists. It's kind of circular reasoning. You have to break that.
Not at all. Premises would exist even if no one existed, even if God didn't exist, because the premise God doesn't exist would still exist. So
who is giving
Who is
that premise?
putting forth the
I mean,
premise?
unless that premise is orbiting the planet, I have no idea what you're talking
Is it in
about.
a fortune cookie flying around the sun that someone's going to run into?
see
I mean, what is
Keith
the premise?
trying to point to as far as the numbers, when we're talking about this theoretical universe with 9 planets and no humans,
Right.
the number
What-
9
what if-
still
what if there's-
exists. The premise, there are 9
right?
planets,
Even if there's
still
no
exists.
one, even if there's no one to count 9 planets, there's
I argue
still 9
that there
planets
is
opposed to
not an abstract concept there. There are just planets.
Well, let's
There is
ask you
no
guys
one to
this.
say 9
And the
planets. There's
premise-
not a 9 that's floating
premise-
around in space.
No, because it's abstract. That doesn't mean it doesn't
Correct.
exist.
The
Because it's
abstract
abstract
is
does not mean
is
it
necessarily limited within the mind. Or else, who is giving the abstract thought? How is that existing? In what sense is that abstract concept existing if a mind isn't
It
abstracting
exists
it?
by its own nature.
All right, so it's a naked assertion, basically, what you guys are doing.
It's something that is obviously self-existent.
Is clearly not obvious.
Well, wait. Something obvious self-existent. All right. The color blue. Does it exist in nature?
Yes, it does.
No, it does not.
It doesn't. The reason why is your eyes are specially tuned in order to receive the frequency of light that is blue. What about those who are colorblind?
The
Does blue
frequency of
exist for
light-
colorblind?
They
The
simply
free-
don't recognize that they exist, just as
No.
you don't recognize that there are self-existing concepts like
No.
premises, like God, like numbers.
No, the
It sounds like
frequency
we're getting
of
into the same argument here as if a tree falls in the forest and there's no one here to hear it, does it make a sound?
the frequency of light
Yes.
exists. Blue does not. Blue is a sensation that is created by your occipital lobe, given the frequency of light and jiggling of your neurons. Blue
Charlie, why
does
don't you
not exist in
explain to them-
nature.
Explain to them that disease where someone hits a certain sound and suddenly they
It's
see blue.
synesthesia, where people have some crossed wires where they process sound too close to their visual cortex and they get blue. So if someone hits a G, they see blue. Now that blue does not exist out in nature. It's not a response to the frequency of light. The frequency of light exists, the sensation of blue does not. That exists within our head. So if
That
you're
is
telling
what
me
abstract is.
if you're
That is,
telling me
it's
that
within
that
the head.
scenario of 9 planets, that blue exists, I'm telling you, you're absolutely wrong.
But if everyone sees the same color blue,
Then that you have intersubjectivity. You do not have objectivity. You
And
have an
not
agreement.
everybody sees
why are
it,
we
and
all
just-
seeing the same color then?
How do you know you're seeing the same color? You have no idea that your blue's the same as my blue.
How do
And
we
I'll
know that
guarantee
we
you.
exist? I mean, we're
I'll
getting into
guarantee you-
questions here that are circular that we can't answer.
I'll guarantee you that for some shades of red and green, if you're not colorblind, you're seeing different colors than I am. Guarantee, because I am
You
red
guys
green
should
colorblind.
really look this
Okay,
up
great.
because Charlie's absolutely right. The frequency of light exists, however, the perception capabilities are within the individual.
That's the difference. Your concept of 9, I mean, if someone were to fly in a rocket and count the planets 9, sure, that exists. Outside of someone flying in a rocket, I would argue absolutely not. The number 9 does not exist. You have multiple planets that are just revolving around unnoticed by anyone, with no abstract concepts whatsoever, unless you're arguing that the rocks have minds that can abstractly come up with 9.
Would the premise that there are no numbers, would that exist in any possible world?
No, because not
Oh,
unless
so it wouldn't, really. In any
Not
possible
unless-
world, it would not exist that there are no numbers. So
Not
in fact,
unless-
there are numbers.
Not unless someone is there
By
to
definition,
make
you
the
just-
premise. If someone's there to make the premise,
So-
then that premise then exists in that guy's head. I can't believe you're arguing that there's a premise that just that's floating around in nature that just
No,
existing.
It's you who are confusing physicalism with abstract. I'm not saying that it's floating around. I'm saying that it actually exists.
Where does it
How do
How do
exist?
you measure a premise?
Where?
How do you
When they're
physically measure a
recognized, it
premise?
Still
Where
exists.
does it exist? Where? Where does that premise
9 planets
exist?
Or the 5 planets
When you
exist,
say
or
where-
however many there are.
When you say where, you're making
Yes.
a mistake of a physical presence of
see.
something that's abstract.
I
It
see.
doesn't
So-
have locality.
So it doesn't exist in any location. It doesn't exist in any time. It doesn't exist in any mind. So
Correct.
on what definition of
Outside
existing
universe,
does it
that's
actually exist?
We're talking about those things that exist outside the universe.
Oh, so
I thought we were
we're back
talking
to a
inside the
special
universe.
meeting. So basically, God is on
Here
the
I thought
the
in your
line that
scenario-
premises have been forever too.
Here I thought in your scenario we're talking about inside the universe. And now you're talking about outside the universe. It's amazing to me. All right. I think we've hit
We're talking about
Kalam.
all possible things that exist, but you have, by definition, excluded anything outside the universe. I do not.
Okay. Okay.
Because-
Then exactly how does it exist outside the universe? How? That's what I thought. Moving on to Kalam, away from Kalam. Let's get into
It
your...
exists self-existently.
Okay.
But isn't that a special
Forget
case
it.
of pleading?
Forget it,
No,
Leighton.
it's not.
Forget it.
It's
All right,
not.
all right, all right.
Leighton, we're
We're
done.
not going to get
One of
anywhere
the
on
many
this. Let's
things
just
that are self-existent.
Once you get to the point
They
of
exist
arguing
by necessity.
arguing by defining things into existence, we're done.
all right,
we're done.
all right. So
All
what
right.
are we going to move into
Sounds
next,
like a
Charlie?
sitcom here.
We're moving on to, given the existence of a God, what evidence do you have for Christianity?
Yeah, that was the first 20 minutes. What is even more revealing is the email discussions which went back and forth between Leighton and Kirk. If you read through the emails going down, and at the end Kirk decides he wants no more of this and blocks Leighton from sending emails to him. When you read it, it is obvious that one, the Evidence for Faith boys did not realise that they did not acquit themselves at all, in any way at all, and that they are really sore losers. The link to the email exchange between Leighton and Kirk is also in the crutch bar down below. For those of you who haven't done so already, check out Irrilegiosophy. Buy Chuck and Leighton a beer.